Okay. So now that we explained that the idea of lechem min haaretz and the lechem min hashamayim on the spiritual level, even the lechem al haaretz is on a very high level. So now we can understand v'zehu vayachilcha esamon. This is what the pasuk says, that Hashem fed you the mon leman hodiacho, so to let you know, kiloi al halechem levada yichya ha'adam. The life of the person is not just on the lechem, which is also a very high madrege. Ki al kol moitze pi havaya yichya ha'adam. The life of the person comes from the moitze pi havaya, which is a higher level than the level of lechem. So with this is understood the hachidush, the lechem in hashamayim, al lechem in haaretz, that the novelty that we're saying that they got the lechem in hashamayim, they got the mon over the lechem that comes min haaretz. That's even according the lechem that comes from the order or from the ground, who is in the highest level. To give you something greater and more, a higher level than the lechem min haaretz, even as lechem min haaretz is already in the highest of level. As we mentioned earlier, the gam lechem min haaretz beruchnis ha'inyonim hu inyanai lechulu. That also bread that comes min haaretz in the spiritual aspect of it is something very elevated. It's something very great. And here we're saying, no, that the mon is even greater, the moitze pi havaya. So he explains that this is Sovev Kol Almin versus Memalu Kol Almin, or even much higher than Sovev Kol Almin. Hine, hakosalka daitoch dal halechem levada yichya ha'adam. This thought that you may have thought that just the lechem alone can vitalize, give life to the person. That's similar to what we say. So on one hand, we say the kololus habriya kulo hi ba'ofen de olam, that generally creation, all of creation, is in a way of olam. We call it a world. The world, creation of a world, of an olam. Olam comes miloshin helam vehestem. It's blocked and it's hidden. How could we say the world is a level of helam, blocked, and then the other hand, afal pisha olam al milui nivra? We say olam was created to its fullest and the highest madrege. Here we're saying it's blocked. But yes, on the fullest level of Mamalakul Almim. But there is still the helam of the level of Sovev Kol Almin and higher. The reason why Olam Amilui Nivra Shezeu Mipnei and then there is helam is Neshashom is Gala in the world is only reveals Rakayin the Mamalakul Almin. Only the level of Mamalakul Almin, which is Beloshin Hazoyer V'Hakabola. And that about this we say. So just like over there, the helam is because it's only Memalikul Almim. The Tachlis Hashlemus, the Bnei Yisrael, the ultimate wholesomeness of the Bnei Yisrael, he later is to know Shaloi al halechem levade yichye ha'adam. Ki al kol moitze pi havaya yichya ha'adam. That the ultimate goal is to know that the ultimate wholesomeness is to know that it's not just memalo kolam, it's not lechem levada yichya ha'adam. But ki al kol moitze pi havaya yichya ha'adam, it's on the moitze pi havaya. The moitze hu loshen moker v'shoirish. Moitze means the root of, so it's not even pi havaya, but it's moitze pi havaya. Loshen moker v'vur v'kam mekomets. So it says the be'erech ha'inyan the memalekul almim. So when you start relative to memalekul almim, what is the level of moitze pi havaya, the source of the pi havaya, relative to memalekul in your sevikul almim? That's the level of sevikul almim. So we're saying to know about sevikul almim. But in a more general way, it's even higher than sevikul almim. That's an idea that comes through the lechem min hashamayim, is something which is higher than memala and seviv, than both. Which is shalamaylo mikol say that hayishtashlus, which is higher than all of the ishtashlus. Shezeu inyan aderech inyan hatal. This idea that it's beyond hishtalshlus doesn't impact, it doesn't follow the laws of the olam of hishtalshlus, is the tal lemetzer. We see when we compare rain to dew, so this is dew, this level of moitze pi havaya. The tal lemetzer. Tal never stops, which means it's not in ishtalshlus, it's not bita tachtoinim. It comes from above. It's higher than mal and sevivim. Okay, so in order for the person to get to that recognition, to the level, the recognition of seviv and higher than seviv, in order to get to that recognition, notwithstanding that memale itself, lechem in oretz, is a high madrega, is lochein vayachilcha samon. That's why he fed you the mongemer. The inyan zeh, because there you have this concept that the lechem min hashamayim, which is moitze pi havaya, that lechem min hashamayim, which is the higher level than hishtalshlus, that's the moitze pi havaya, nase dam ubosar kipsore. It becomes the blood and the flesh like your own flesh, which means you consume it, you eat it, and that higher level becomes part of your body. That is, that it penetrated and it took in, it went through also the blood and the flesh. That's how much this spiritual moitze pi havaya, that mona, came down to the level in which it encompassed and it took through the entire dam of basar. That's how we get to the knowledge of the level of sevikul almim. So this is the novelty of the lechem min hashamayim. Although beforehand there was already the idea of lechem min haaretz, and lechem min haaretz had major revelations, and through the lechem min haaretz, that was before the desert, they ate lechem min haaretz, before the man came to them, and they had very great, elevated and wondrous revelations through the lechem min haaretz. Okay, now, and as I mentioned earlier, that it's through the lechem min haaretz, you get to the level of chokhmah. Then hatinuk yodei likras abo, to the level of a child does not know how to call his father, to say father, achitim tam dogon, until he tastes the taste of grain, which means that makes him old enough to appreciate the level of abo. So that means that it's a high madrege, to the extent that this idea, the lachamin haaretz, the bread that comes from the ground, Paul, it impacted. That was before the man. It impacted. Not only did they recognize Hashem as not only that it affected as a inyan the Yudea, but in the Yudea Likrasabo, Shekvar Omru, and the Yidden already to that extent, they said Abo, they said Zek, Keli Vanvei. So there was a recognition already of Hashem to the extent that they said by Kriyas Yamsuf, that was all before the Mono, Zek, Keli Vanvei. But yet, notwithstanding all the great madreges, Yachaliyas, Kol Zed, this can all be only in the level of Memalkulamim. Still in the level of Malkulam, even these high madreges. How do we see what happens that it's Memalkulamim? Is while there was a jolt of revelation by Kriyas Yamsuf and by Yitzias Mitzrayim, Niglalim, but it was temporary. Wasn't the idea of Sefer Kalam fully. The Afal Pish Lishalifisha Hoya Inyan de Nigla Alehem Melech Malchei Hamlochim HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Although that on a temporary basis, there was this idea, they got a major revelation. It was before the man, but it still was a revelation. It was Nigla Aleihem, revealed to them, Melech Malcham Lochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoid b'atzmei, all by himself, in the greatness of Hashem, and redeemed them. So there was a tremendous revelation. And similarly, by the splitting of the sea, Chazal tell us that during Kriyas Yamsuf, there was such a great revelation that even the greater of the Nevi'im were not able to see what even a maidservant at the Yamsuf. There was a tremendous revelation. It's greater than the Gila HaNevi'im, the Godlush HaNevi'im, to the great of the Nevi'im. So that means that there were tremendous amount of revelations, and they just had Lechem in Haaretz, they didn't have Lechem in Hashem. But yet, that was only temporary. Those Giluyim were a temporary revelation. But following that, later on, then there was an organized level of service. From day to day, darga, one step after the other step, all the level of ishtalshlus. So from this, it's evident that this is connected to Malukul Amim, because the Malukul Amim comes with an order and the ishtalshlus. And therefore, when the Yidden needed to receive the Torah, and to receive the Torah in such a way that was only nischadish, it only came about by Matan Torah. Yes, there was limud Torah before, but now the Yidden had to learn to receive the Torah the way the Torah was given to them at Matan Torah. It was on a whole higher level. Hainu l'mayla yoser me'inyan ha-Torah shahoya lifnei. This was higher than the idea of Torah that took place before, in the time that was preceded to the Imon. Because over there we say the Kaimu Kol HaTorah Kula Achelenitna. There was a observance of the forefathers. They all observed the Torah even before it was given. So there was a Torah, but now we needed a new level in revelation of Torah. That level of Torah that we're talking about, that was Nischadish by Matan Torah, is called walking, halicha in Torah. Shezehu inyan ha-Torah kifi shehi b'bchinas halicha davke. That is the level of Torah, as Torah is in the level of halicha, of walking. Hayelech b'seirasi is the level of halicha in Torah. Halicha means the infinite possibilities and revelation that the Torah brings. The true idea of walking hubligvul is walking without any limit ad till the way that there is no comparison of the new level to the previous level. And also to the extent the halicha is bligvul is to such an extent even once one reached the infinite level of Torah, it is still considered harezeh gavul. This is still a limit legabe inyan haTorah shetzarich lovei a love ayidei kiyum hatzivui the mailim bekodesh ugam nisinas koich the mailim bekodesh. This is still limited relative to the new idea that he has to reach. He reached Bli Gvul, and relative to the new level, this is Gvul, that you have to reach, because the fulfillment of Hashem's command, which is not just a command, it's not just an instruction, it also gives you the ability, the power, the Ma'ilin B'Kodesh, to elevate B'Kodesh. So you are basically now given the command and the capabilities to go to a whole new level of B'Gvul. How do we have this in the Torah? That came through the Mon, this level, that while there was all the Madregas before, but here by Matan Torah we get a much higher level of what Torah has to accomplish. So as an introduction to this level that was revealed by Matan Torah, behold, I will rain down for you this lechem in Hashemayim, which is higher than Mimalkulam, etc., and Mimal and Seviv. And therefore, Hine, although they already found themselves at that time, they were already on a high step, I said earlier. They were already in the high level in which they were following the Eibishter when they went out into the desert. And that's called following the Hashem in a land of Zerua, which is represents a very high level. Mikol Mokoim Nikra Ze Lechtech Acharai Davka. That is still called going in behind at that avodah. She'ein ze inyan hapnimius. That's not the idea of pnimius. So going in the midbar also is still not the level of pnimius. It's in a way of acharai. Before Baruch Mamorim Melukotim has explained at length in the previous Mamorim that the Rebbe said over there in Basiligani over there in the as printed earlier in this in the Mamorim. Shezeu b'chinas v'davke v'ad sheklolus ha'avoda b'meshech zman hagolus, to the extent that generally the avoda during the time of golus is only achrei. B'yiseidim is it klolus ha'avoda ba'olam esbiyah. Not only in golus, but generally when we talk about the avoda in ishtalshelus in the malukul almim, in the words of biyah, hinei hakoilu b'chitzonius atik. It's all the achrei, the externality of atik. Bedav kilos ilovo yizgale b'chinas pnimius atik. But only in the future, specifically in the future to come, that is when the pnimius atik will be revealed. That's why we call this still, before we call this all lechtech achrei. Kivon shezehu chitzonius atik, since this is all only the external of atik, nikras lechtech achrei, that's still called behind. Ki einze amitis inyan haponim, because that's not the true idea of the face, it's only achrei. Amitis inyan haponim shebetoirom, the true level of ponim that is in the Torah, it's in a way that there is no acher in existence b'chlal. There's no hind, there's only front. As the luchas, there was not front and the back. It was all the front, so you can read on luchas on all sides the same way. Also, as explained earlier at length, that's the level of the song of Torah, which is the level which is higher than Panim v'Achar. There's no Achar over there. So, being in the level of Lechtech, Achrei Bamidbar, the level is still the level of Achrei. That's all before we get to Loya Lechem Levade Metzepi Havaya. We want to go to the higher level, Lechtech, to keep on going, the Halicha, as he said, that is an inyan of Ein Aroich, to inyan of Lechtech. For that they had the mon. So Zayin. So hinini mamtir goimer leman anasenu hayelach v'terosi. That's why the pasuk says, "I will rain down leman anasenu, so that I will raise him to hayelach v'terosi, to go have the level of halicha b'toira, the bleak wool of Torah. That the bechdei love libchinas halicha b'toira." In order to come to the level of halicha, yelech b'terosi, to level of going into the level of ligvul, in a lifnazet tzarich liyes, which took place by Matan Torah. The pasuk is saying here, you're getting them on, so that you know to get the yelech, the level of halicha. In a lifnazet tzarich liyes, saying in the mon beforehand needs to be the idea of the mon. Okay, mamer Mechilta, the Mechilta says, "Lenit no Torah elo leoichlei hamon." The Torah was given only to the people that eat the mon. It's basically the mon gives you the Torah. And the emphasis over here is leoichlei hamon. They're eating the mon. Okay, now hamon, as earlier we said in the Taich, that he fed you the mon. Shamon tzorich liya is ba'ofen shenase. That the mon needs to be in such a way that it becomes like your blood and flesh, just like your body. The inyan hamon who shaloi hoyo boy psoilu. What is mon? Mon had no leftovers. It was totally consumed. Shehu lamaila legamri meseder ha hishtalshlus. That is entirely higher than the order of hishtalshlus. Mekivon shulamaila mimemale kol almim u'misevev kol almim. This is higher the mon than memale kol almim and sevev kol almim v'gam lemaila medargi agimul, and it's even higher than the third level shalamaila memale v'sevev kol almim. That is higher than memale and sevev kol almim. That's higher than that as well. So the mon comes from even a higher level than the level which is higher than memale and sevev. And then you take that mon and you bring it down by deishin boy from dachila. Since this idea, this high, lofty level comes down in a way of eating, and it becomes like blood and flesh, like your body. Through this becomes the idea of anasenu. Anasenu means I will raise you. The kamavur bekamadrushim begam b'sefer hashoroshim, as explained in many of the Mamorim and also in the books that deal with the roots of the words hare anasenu. The word anasenu, normally we translate it to test him, but here we say to raise him. Hu inyan, the test raises you, but here is the idea aman anasenu shel haroma behagabo. That's the idea of raising and elevating. K'moy orim nisi, I will raise my flag. Basically, when you raise something, it's called nace. Nace. Because through eating of the mon, magbiim oisoi lemailo, they raise him above. Mikol say that ha'hishtalshlus, from the entire order of the hishtalshlus. Sha'al yidei zeh boim. Then you come. Lebchinas ha'halicha b'Torah, to going in Torah, ha'yelech b'Torasi, through the achilcha esamon. V'zehu mashekosu, and this is also what we say. The mon, it says, was an oimer lagulkoilis daika. Doesn't say an oimer for a person, but an oimer for the skull. The skull represents the level which is makim beyond the intellect, which shows us to the idea that the mon comes from higher than ishtalshlus. That's why we say Eimer lagul goylus davke lagul goylus. The inyan hagul goylus hu lemailo afilu meharosh. The idea of the gul goylus is higher even than the head, as we say in the pasuk k'moshe kosuf su'u es roish kol adas bnei Yisrael. So you're raising the level of roish of the community, ligul giloisim, to the level of gulgoilas, to the level of higher than the roish. Hainu shaharamas haroish suas roish. That means that raising the head suas roish hiligul giloisim shalamayim harosh is to the gulgoisim which is higher than the roish. This was the mon. It was an omer for the gulgoilas. Why? Because the mon kinyone hulifel be Yisrael. Because that idea of the mon is to impact by the Yidden idea, that knowledge, the loy al halachem levade, that it's not just an lechem emalikul almim yichya hodon, which lives the person. Ki al kol moitze pi havaya yichya hodon, but it's on the moitze pi havaya on higher than ishtalshlus that the person lives, or commission is bar leil, as explained earlier. Ches. Ulahavi loshen mamtir davke. It says hineni mamtir, rain down about the lechem in Hashemayim. Hineni mamtir lechem goymer. Mamtir means to rain down, to bring it down all the ways to the level in the Hishtalshlus into this world. We can understand that from that which was explained in the Likutei Torah in the Mamorim of the Parshas Ekev. The Av shebechlolus hinei hamon hu bechinas tal kinal, even though that generally mon is the level of tal that we said before, loy metzar, it didn't stop, and it is higher than ishtalshlus kinal, as I said before, and also the mon came with a dew every morning, beredes hatalun, it's all connected to tal. And here all of a sudden we're connecting it, associating with rain. We're saying hini mamtir lochem. Yet, notwithstanding the fact that the mon is like the tal, but yet nizgashim, it physicalized ad shedochu b'maducha, to the extent that they crushed it in a crusher, ubishlu b'poror, and they cooked it in a pot. So that means that level of tal, the level of higher than ishtalshlus, came down, material, physicalized, until you can physically cook it and grind it. Now, we know by some it took more work. They had to go out to collect it. But by tzaddikim, it says they didn't have to work for it because it came right by their doorsteps. But even the tzaddikim, shafilu betzaddikim, even by the tzaddikim, she'etzlam hoya achilas hamon b'litircha, by them, eating of the mon was void of any effort. They just got it over the ear, not like the others who had to at least work for it. But still, it's not totally without work, without effort. But they still needed v'lochtu me'al pesach oil. They still needed to collect it from the entrance of the oil. And then after collecting it, you needed to literally eat it. To the extent you ate it, it's explained in the earlier Shahoyogam Inyan Habracha. You ate it and you also made a bracha. Either Hamoitzi Lachem min Hashamayim, one who brings Lechem Hashamayim, or Benusach Achar, or a different version, V'chulu, as brought down in the Rishonim, the discussion of it. And the Rebbe brings here a whole discussion over here. Also love it. Exactly what's the issue with the bracha over here in the note. Note 52. Avol b'kol. So it physicalized, it materialized, it became very megushim. People ate it literally, but still, it was still had the potency, it had the source, the tal, the higher than ishtalshlus in it. By seeing and eating the mon, whose source is from the crystal talo, which is a level in the Kabbalah for the dew, the talo de bedulcha. It extended him below until it became physicalized. As explained in the Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe from the year Tuvkov Samachez and other places. That way it will be known to them. They'll find out, they'll know that it's not just on the bread that the person lives. So we're not negating here and saying, no, it's not bread, it's something else. It's not rak al halechem levade, which means it's a level of memalekul almin, but we're talking about a higher level. I know. It's not that there does not need to be the concept of eating bread. Elo, but rather that you also need to eat the lechem and השמים, שלוחם נזגש hamon. That's why the mon became physicalized. Omno, but what are we rejecting? What are we negating? Hashlilahi she'ein zal lechem levada. It's not only bread. Hainu bechinas memalukul almin shebozeh. It's not just the physical, what fills the world, which is in the lechem, commissioners barleil, but there's also the level of sevev and higher. Elo al kol meitzepi havaye yichye ha'odom. But it is the moitze pi havaya that vitalizes the person. It's through the moitze pi havaya which dresses up in the lechem, which took place. The moitze pi havaya, the tal, the highest of level, came down in achila, as the mon was physicalized. So while you get the physical mon, but in it you have the great potency, the great potential from its source. As we say, it's hidden from the eyes of all living. And then that's the highest level in Torah. The Torah says I was a play thing for Hashem. That's how great the level of Torah is. But what happens from there? And from there it journeyed and it descended in the secret of the steps of the various from one step to the other, ad shenislap shechulu b'dyala sefer, to the extent that it dressed up in the ink which you write on the parchment and came down to the letters of Torah. Test. This is the general idea. The Eibishter says, I'm going to rain down from you, for you, the bread from the Shamayim. Although the Yidden beforehand were already on the highest of levels, but yet still, when I will give rain down to you the bread min hashamayim, so then their step, in the great step that they were before the lechem min hashamayim, magia lahamaylo, does not reach to the advantage, to the greatness that needs to be by them through this idea, through the lechem min hashamayim. They have to go on a higher level. Whether as it relates to the study of Torah. That the learning of Torah needs to be in a way that to walk. And we say Davka Yelech B'Toirosi. We don't say Hayelech B'Torah. It's Toirosi, Toiros Hashem. Shalidavke al derech hachiluk. Similar that we say, sometimes we call it mitzvahs Hashem, and sometimes we say mitzvah sai, a higher level in mitzvahs, as the Rebbe brings down over here in the parentheses from Likutei Torah. Obefrat al pi hamevur b'Torah, especially according to what's explained in Torah, When this pasuk talks about alicha yelech b'teirasi, will he walk in my Torah? Yeshnam beizin yonim. You have the two aspects: the milmailo lemato, milmato lemailo. The walking includes from above to below, from below to above. So that needs to be in a way of halicha and Torah, but also as it expresses itself in the avodah of Kol Masecha Yul Shem Shemayim V'Hein B'Negei, and also as it relates, connects la avodah. The Kol Masecha Yul Shem Shemayim, all your actions should be for the sake of heaven. U'Bechol Drachecha Dei, in all your ways you should know Hashem, which applies to the normal, natural requirements that the person's masecho and drachecho nikra b'shem achila. Generally, the needs of the human being are called achila. Hinei hayidei hamon nifal. What was accomplished with the mon? Afal pi sheyidei yesh alechem zeh yesh kazal kadai toch lemar. Even though the person knows that this bread, the tzorchei odom, you think that your needs, that alone is person lives on. In other words, he can be satisfied with his talshalus, with the lechem min haaretz. You think akavoni lechem zeh k'moishu betachlis hashleimus, that the intent is for this lechem, as it is in the highest level. In the Malach Lam, as lechem points to commission is bar to the highest level. That's only lechem min haaretz. And it's not just, life is not just on this lechem. The person's life needs to be from the level which is higher than Mimali Kol Almim, that comes through the lechem in Hashemayim. Gufa. So Leman Hoidiacho, it says Daiko. To let you know, meaning that you should appreciate it with your knowledge, not just with Amunah. It's not just merely in a way of believing Kim Yediya, but rather to know. Ubetachlis Hashlem is the Yediya, and the ultimate total wholesomeness of knowing. That he should know when he eats the bread, that then his vitality is received while he's eating the bread. Min haaretz, he knows that it's mitzvah piavaya. That's the life of the person. Yud. Torah is eternal. We need to understand what is the eternality of all these details, and of this general idea, that Hashem pours down the lechem in Hashemayim. Okay, it happened then, that gave them the idea, the person, no, but what does it mean to us? Further, we need to understand. The Hine Isa bebrachas, we find in Mamorim Melukotim that Moshe tiken lam liYisrael birchas hazon, that Moshe instituted for the Yidden the bracha, the first bracha of the benching. Hazon es ha'ilon b'shosh yared lahem mon, when did the mon descended to them? And because we're not saying this, lochen emrim hazon loshen nister, that's why we say the one who feeds. We don't talk about feeding us now because we're not talking about what we're eating now. We're talking about Moshe gave Hashem saying that what they used to feed the Yidden in the desert, the mon. And Yeshua tikkun lam birchas haaretz, and Yeshua instituted them the blessing for the land. Al haaretz v'al hamozen, eretz the mafke mozen. The land and the food, meaning the land that produces the food. So we have the two ideas of lechem min hashamayim, and we have the lechem min haaretz, And here we're saying now, when you're eating your bread, you're saying Hazon about the lechem min hashamayim, about the mon, chiyovim gamat. And that's also now we have to talk about these, about the mon and about the land. Today we're also mechuyev now on this bracha. The first bracha birchas hamon is birchas hamon v'san hamon. The idea is as explained earlier barucha. Also, this was in the previous Fabrengen in the Mamorim Melukotim. Dafilu kshavoi dehi me'eze tam sheyiyah. Even if one's service is only in the lower level of Yichud Tato, nevertheless, still, yet we need from time to time also to a shine from the Yichud Law, to the extent that this is going to impact openly. You need Yichud Law to have some impact in an open way. But the similar when a person works only in a way that he forces himself, he subdues. So yet you still need to have the reflection, at least it's in your mind, and reflection in your understanding. Also in the idea of ishapcha. Maybe you can't actually practice ishapcha, but still in your mind you need to have also the idea of ishapcha. Similarly is by the study of Torah. Even though that the main study is in the revealed part of Torah, over there's the idea of effort. You must also have the concept, the ideas of the inner part of Torah. And it's explained at length in the booklet of Eitz HaChaim, Ubekama Derushim and many Mamorim. On the contrary, not only do we also need to have the level of Pnimis HaTorah, the Pnimis HaTorah, the idea of the inner part of Torah, that is idea of salt. Through this salt, you sustain the whole learning. The Gemara brings down that the preservative is the salt. Kodisa b'Shabbos, the Gemara brings down in the Gemara Shabbos, if a person doesn't have Yerushalayim, it's, for example, like a person says to his agent, bring up a kur chitim to the attic for storage. We're talking about the wheat as it's on the highest level. He says, bring up chitim to the aliyah. Aliyah means in the high level, you have chitim. That's the lechem min haaretz. He said to him, did you mix in a measure, a kav, of the chumtin of the earth to preservatives? Amar leilav. He said, no. So he says, you should not bring it up because the chitim cannot last. That means if without the concept of the salt, even if you have a kur of chitim, lechem min haaretz, and it's in the aliyah, it's in the elevated states, cannot be sustained. You need that pnimis haTorah. Similarly, it's in generally by the service of the worlds of Biyah. Our sages of blessed memory say that it needs to be just like in your heart there's only Hashem, so in our heart there's only one. That's the Shvatim answered to Yaakov when he said he was worried that maybe they went astray. He said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Kshem she'en b'libcha le'echad, kach en b'lebeinu echad. Hainu, that means she'tzrichim liskor ma she'en b'libcha. The Shvatim represent Biyah, and they were in Biyah, and Yaakov represents in Atzilus. So I'm tzrichim lizkur mashein belibcha. So Yaakov Atzilus el echad. This that in by Yaakov in Atzilus only echad v'zeh poyel, and this also impacts shein belibeno, which is the Shvatim, which are Biyah. Elo echad, only the level of echad shein belibcha, just like in Hanani Adchul. Behind we're talking about now also getting the level of echad into biyah to the shvatim, because normally yichud tato would be the level of voed. Baruch Shem Kved Malchus Elohim voed. Voed is echad. When you exchange the letters of echad, you get voed. But they have it directly also echad. The noise of lazesh yesh in the void. In addition to the fact that there's the concept of void, yesh lekama in the echad, he also has the idea of echad. The av shoyin the void who amshochas malchusei shal hakadosh baruch hu b'chol ha'olam eskulom. Even though ha'olam void means forever, which means bringing down baruch shem kved malchusei, to bring down the malchus of HaKadosh Baruch in all the worlds. So void itself is already a level of bringing down Malchus. It doesn't reach to the higher level of Echad, which they said, getting the level of Echad of Atzilus to them. Even though void, as you switch the letter, you also get Echad. It doesn't reach the letters as they were before the exchange. As explained in how these changes actually impact, that they make them a little bit of different, and they lower their level through the exchange. Yudalef. Now we understand the eternity, the mon that in every place and in every time. In every condition, situation that he finds himself. One needs to know the fact that he has lechem from the ground. Meaning all the levels that he receives by making a vessel in the natural ways. In all the work that you do, he needs to know that it's not just on the lechem that the person lives. What you live and what you get is from the Meitzipi Havaya. For in that matter, in that aspect that you receive in a natural way, over there exists the Meitzipi Havaya. That is the root and the source of all matters as they are in godliness. To the extent the Meitzipi Havaya goes even to the source of the sources and the roots of all roots. That comes when you do the Chol Malachtecha Shatasa, in all the work that you do ba'olam hazeh hatachten, in this low world, Bizman Hagolus, in the time of exile, and in the darkness, which is double and quadruple. The same thing is in the service of the person. That here we're talking about in all the Gashmistic thing, you need to know that it's the Eibishter behind all the physical, but also in the service that you work. Even though it's in a way that it's in a way of in a way of the lower level of yichud, in a way that he has to force himself. This is the nitzchius that is in the mon. You have the nitzinas koyach, meaning the power given to you from the mon, until it comes out openly. As understood from the idea that's explained we say Atu Yira Milsa Zutra, so he is Yira, a small thing. The Gemara answers the Gabe Moshe Milsa Zutra, so yeah, relative to Moshe, it's a small thing. This becomes also by every Yid of Milsa Zutrasi, meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu's, what took place, the mon there, can impact and become something which impacts you in practically. Now, will be in your similar is in our situation. I give you the lechem and hashamayim, which is in the schus of Moshe, because we know the mon came down in the schus of Moshe Rabbeinu, the water, the Yaakov, Aaron, and Miriam, but this came down from Moshe. And we all have a part of Moshe. Moshe is the Milsa Zurtusei. That's why there is by every single Yid of the Jewish people, in every place, and every time, and in any situation, condition that he is. Just like it's in general, your service needs to be in a way infused by the mon in the level of Moshe's Kain or Gambalimud HaTorah. Likewise, it's in the level of study of Torah. No matter which level you're up to the study of Torah, even at the first level, when the child begins to speak, that you teach him Torah, so we already say Torah Tziva Moshe. That first thing that we teach him when he starts to talk. So we connect that the Torah comes the Moshe, just by learning and saying this, he has already Moshe Dir. As explained earlier, that the inyan of the mon is connected to the recognition, the knowledge that this is Torah. And then you bring this down below, till it becomes like your blood and flesh spiritually. To the extent it also becomes your blood and flesh, literally, physically. Spiritually becomes like you fused with you, and also spiritually. This revelation is through spreading the wellspring of the inner part of Torah to the outside. At least it comes revealed, at least in a way of knowledge, at least minimally, in a way it's measured like an oimer, in a measured way. You get mamtir. That's why it says the language of mamtir, not do as in all places with relationship to the mon, because this comes down in a limited way. This impacts just as it was in the mon the first time. That it reached the level of Gulgoylus, Commission is Barleil. Then they ate it, and it becomes like blood and flesh, like the person's body, even in his feet, in a cane, now too is revealed the idea of the Gulgoylus, the level of the higher level. As said earlier, that in every place, every time, in any condition the person finds himself, starting with the way it's in the service. Even if openly he only has the vod, the exchange of the letters of echad and vod. But still he knows like by Yaakov, that just by your heart is only echad. In our heart there's tak echad, not vod, but echad. Inside his heart there is the echad mamish. The loiker v'chitzoin is not as just in the externality. He only has the exchange of the levels of echad, the words of vod. Similarly by Torah, that once the child starts to speak, you're already telling him, connecting with Moshe, that this Torah has been told by Moshe. How much more so? Yeshli in the Pnimis HaTorah. He grew up in Torah, and he has the idea of Pnimis HaTorah. This reveals later on the inner of the world. The inner of Torah brings the inner, reveals the inner of the world. That becomes the close preparation of and brings later on the true complete redemption of the Mashiach through our righteous Mashiach. Shows you the Pnimis Atik Begilui. Then the ideas of Pnimis Atik will be openly. To the extent that your master, your teacher, will no longer hide himself. It'll be face to face, not achre, not achere. This was already during Matan Torah. That happened the first time. It raised us. It was raised so that it can be going in Torah. To go in Hashem's Torah. Just as similar to it was at the time Torah was given, it should be openly, and very soon be Mesa Mashiach in the times of Mashiach. The main schar will be in the 7,000, but this will be actually, but also in the time of Mashiach. That main will be in the true and complete redemption through a righteous Mashiach.